There are so many things that could be said in tribute to Carl Gershman and of his career at the NED that it's hard to know where to begin. Democracy for Carl was a personal matter. It was providing moral and material sustenance to the brave people struggling against authoritarian repression and corruption all over the world.
I think when we as a nation have stuck to our mission, we've often succeeded in advancing democracy, and Carl, you were at the tip of that spear. No one has been quite as effective in bringing together business and labor, Republicans and Democrats, bringing together activists and academicians as you have done in this effort, all to lead a fight for freedom.
First time I met Carl Gershman was probably some 30 years ago, and for the next 30 years, in the way sailors throw an anchor when they enter the port, anytime I have been visiting Washington, D.C., I was trying to see Carl Gershman and talk to him.
Our former IRI chairman saw in Carl, I think the same qualities a lot of us saw in John McCain. A fierce resistance and hatred of tyranny and abusive authoritarian government in all forms. Total determination to stand up for human liberty and political rights around the world, not only when it's convenient, but all the time. And really a conviction that although it's a big fight every day, the spirit of liberty resides in the heart of every man and woman.
There was no voice as strong for freedom and democracy and human rights and the rule of law and an independent press than Carl's. Carl's was a constant call for all of those principles. I was born in Cuba, lost my homeland to communism. Carl has been fighting for freedom and democracy all of his life. I'm going to miss you, amigo, but I know you'll still be a fighter wherever you are.
Whenever I review my 5 years life in South Korea, which really looks like a miracle even to me, I always remember one man whose name is Carl Gershman.
Carl, in nearly 10 years of working with you, one of the things that impressed me most was the way you embodied the mission of the NED. I saw it happen over and over again. When people met you, whether they were Americans who'd grown a bit cynical about the ability of the United States to promote democracy abroad, or beleaguered activists from the Middle East and other regions, they all came away renewed in their belief that support for democracy and human rights worldwide is necessary and possible.
When the National Endowment for Democracy began its operations 37 years ago, Carl welcomed the challenge, said, let's make the world a better place. Over the years, here in Congress, support for NED's work has gained bipartisan praise and support, and Carl is a big reason why. Carl understands that the advancement of democracy is not a partisan issue, but a universal value.
Carl Gershman started to fight for Baltic freedom in '84. That's when he met the Soviet delegation in New York and protested against our occupation. He supported all our dissident movements.
Just wanted to say a few words of thanks to Carl for all your inspiration and for your partnership. You are unparalleled. There's just no doubt about it. We stand on your shoulders. You have inspired us all consistently an undiminished passion for this work that really infects not just the Corps, not just the NED, but also people around the world.
I've been fortunate to observe how you talk to world leaders, legislators, journalists, political leaders, and ordinary activists. And for me, it's such an important indicator of a real leader who talks with the same respect to each person.
In recent years, we've especially appreciated the chance to work with NED and the constituent organizations, the National Democratic Institute and the International Republican Institute, in working on the ground to build parliamentary capacity, to strengthen democratic performance in emerging democracies. This has been invaluable work, as has the entire portfolio of the NED.
Whether you are Tiananmen mothers, Liu Xiaobo, bloggers, journalists, intellectuals, lawyers, anyone and everyone in exile or in the country, whether you're Han Chinese, Taiwanese, Uyghur, Hong Kongers, Carl and National Endowment for Democracy has been in solidarity with us and empowering each of us on this path.
The thing I'll always remember about you, Carl, is your ideas. You have a lot of them. And typically when I'd come back from lunch with you, I'd have about 12 things on my agenda that I was supposed to do. I really felt for your staff at that point. I would say that all of your ideas were good, but I could really only get to about 1/10 of them in my time.
It was as a member of the World Movement for Democracy that I have come to appreciate Carl's unshakable faith in democracy and human rights. His work ethics and his integrity and his unbelievable energy and networking capacity. Carl is an indefatigable leader who helped NED grow without becoming a bureaucratic, soulless machine.
When we talked for the first time, I saw right away that Carl knew many things much better than I did, but it turned out that I knew one thing better than he did. And now, more than half a century later, almost whenever I see him, he harks back to that one thing that I knew. It's characteristic of his modesty and generosity of character. Carl made a career in which he's arguably the one person on earth who's made the greatest contribution to supporting Democrats and spreading democracy around the world. And I'm very proud that he's still my friend.
Carl Gershman is the epitome of a public servant. Together, Carl and the National Endowment for Democracy gave hope and tangible assistance to political prisoners, persecuted minorities, and underserved communities throughout undemocratic regimes. Under Carl's leadership, the National Endowment for Democracy earned recognition as the world's leading democracy assistance organization. So I wish you the very best, Carl, and I want to thank you for your service to democracy. Your dedication and your legacy will not be forgotten.
I feel like I've grown up in this movement with you, Carl. It really means so much to us, the Solidarity Center, and workers around the world, that you have stood with workers and trade unionists over the course of your entire career, from your friendship and camaraderie with Brother Bayard Rustin, all the way to the present day, where trade unionists in Burma who are fighting an unjust military regime have benefited from your longtime knowledge and support of their struggle. Thank you for standing up for the people struggling for democracy all over the world, and for bringing all of us along with you.
Nearly 20 years ago, at a time when other foundations did not know who the Uyghurs were, Carl listened to us. He hosted numerous public events at NED and wrote several op-eds calling for the world to wake up to the atrocities suffered by Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims. Carl, your name will be remembered by Uyghurs throughout the history.
The world certainly looked very different when Carl first began and when the National Endowment for Democracy was launched. I had the tremendous privilege of working with Carl for many of those years, beginning back in 1989, when we were first working to see if we could send fax machines into students in China in the aftermath of Tiananmen Square. I've really benefited from Carl's many years of guidance and advice, and watched with great admiration as he has helped spread the cause of democracy and freedom all around the world.
I am personally inspired to uphold Carl's legacy, because promoting democracy around the world is the only way in which we can guarantee a society that recognizes that a usually marginalized group of people, like young women, are full citizens with full rights and need to be treated with respect and dignity.
Intellectually, he's the most vertically integrated person I've ever met. He goes from understanding at the philosophical level to being hands-on, nitty-gritty, coming up with the best methodology to accomplish the task. There's no one more loyal, no one more valuable in the foxhole with you. Carl's word is, well, he's just pure integrity.
Our work is never finished. New autocrats are rising with new challenges to democracy even as we speak. But Carl knows that the cause he has dedicated his life to building and serving will continue to thrive after his retirement. And the rest of us are ready to carry on promoting freedom and opportunity and resisting oppression wherever it arises.
With your devotion and your joyful tenacity, very joyful tenacity, you have expanded the pro-democracy community and connected so many of us together in this noble global cause. And you've facilitated actually countless friendships and bonds among really unlikely partners. You see, Carl, all of us, we're indebted to you. Indebted to you because of your work. Your work has fostered and created a force, a worldwide community that will continue for generations to come. That is one of your great legacies.
Carl, I'm not going to congratulate you on your retirement because I know you're not going to retire. I'm going to thank you for everything you've done and wish you tremendous success and continued engagement in this next chapter of your journey to advance, defend, and improve democracy worldwide.
Without your support, the civil society-driven movement couldn't be on the right track. Their support enabled us to become dedicated and professional human rights documenters, working not only on North Korea, but also for other countries. I've learned from you that democracy secures rights, and rights empower democracy. Your kind words of encouragement are engraved in our minds and are reflected in our continuing actions.
Thank you, Carl, for your extraordinary dedication, your exceptional sense of vocation as you have led the NED for these many years. You have been an inspiration to people around the world, and you've been an inspiration to all of us who have had the privilege of working with you.
For over 35 years, your leadership and dedication to the promotion of democracy and human rights around the world has been instrumental in institutionalizing democracy in countries all over the world and in institutionalizing it as a public foreign policy priority for our country. So again, I thank you for everything you've done, and I look forward to continuing to work together on these critical issues.
Carl, face it, you'll never retire from the world of ideas. Amanda and I and all your friends in Australia wish you and Laurie a happy official retirement. I'll be on the email to you next day.
Carl, you've inspired me deeply. My life has been changed by your model. And I know that as long as you have breath, you will continue to find ways to make this world a freer place for all. And I, for one, am deeply grateful.
Carl is a legendary, humble giant who has helped secure a world safe for democracy and has helped secure democracy in an unsafe world. He has transformed the lives of many, globally and in the US. We are all his beneficiaries. His legacy will be enduring.
More recently, I've come to appreciate an even earlier side of Carl. I've just finished researching and writing a history of President Reagan's foreign policy, where, of course, the National Endowment for Democracy was created, coming out of Reagan's iconic Westminster speech. And it's fun reading the Reagan administration archives and seeing them being very excited early on at this talented young democracy activist named Carl Gershman, whom they tapped to be the inaugural director of the National Endowment for Democracy, a role, of course, which, Carl, you have fulfilled so faithfully over the succeeding decades.
Carl, thank you for bravely being a voice of freedom for those who can't speak for themselves. We know that freedom is not inevitable. It's something that must be fought for and then protected. Freedom transcends nations and cultures. It is a legitimate aspiration for the human condition, one that is not equally enjoyed around the world. The Endowment has always recognized this aspiration and desire among humanity, and it has sought to align the American people with those who are struggling for those freedoms. The preservation and promotion of liberty is a constant struggle, and it is a struggle that the Endowment took on under Carl's leadership and will continue long after his retirement, which is truly a mark of his transformational leadership.
In all the years I've known Carl, I've been tremendously inspired by his unwavering leadership and his unparalleled enthusiasm in standing up for those values and those principles that have once again come under attack in so many countries around the world, including in my own home country of Russia, but that continue to provide hope to millions. While Carl is leading the presidency of the National Endowment for Democracy, he's not leading, and I know will never lead, this continuing fight. And so, Carl, as I wish you all the very best in your next chapter, I look forward to many more events, encounters, and joint endeavors in this continuing struggle for human rights, human dignity, and human freedom.